Hey everyone, it's Heather with Tiller here. Thanks for joining me for this special Tiller Foundations webinar. I'm excited to do this demo of Tiller and to answer all your questions. All right, so let's dive into this one slide that I have here. So today I'll be doing a demo of how to get started with Tiller, how to feed your transaction data into a spreadsheet, how to get the foundation template set up for budgeting and cash flow tracking, and some tips on how to use AutoCat to help with automating your categorizations of your transactions. We'll have a Q&A portion at the end of the session, but you can feel free to post your question at any point during the session as it comes to mind. Just get it into the Q&A tool. There's a button in those Zoom controls specifically for the Q&A, so please post your questions there. It just helps me stay organized during that part of the session. We won't have an opportunity for anyone to turn on their video or audio during this session, so please get your questions into that Q&A tool. When this is over, you'll be prompted to complete a quick feedback survey just to let us know how it went. And then you'll get an email tomorrow with a link to some resources, which will include a link to the recording of this session. So if you zone out during part of it, or you have to go search the laundry or answer the door, or you're just not here live on the session, you can watch the recording tomorrow. I see some folks raising their hands. Like I said, we won't be able to turn on the audio or video during the session, so just get your questions over into the Q&A. Just use that Q&A button down in the Zoom controls. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dive into the demo here. I'm going to switch browser windows. So I like to start this demo from the perspective of someone who started their free trial of Tiller. So they've already landed here on the Tiller console and they've connected a few financial institutions. And so this case, I have a few different financial institutions connected here to Tiller. If you don't have any financial institutions added yet, you can do that by clicking the Add Accounts button, which will look a little bit different if you haven't added any accounts. I think it'll show up somewhere over here. And you can search for and find your financial institutions to go ahead and get those added and pulling that bank data in. And so we're going to start in this demo here from starting with creating the foundation template, linking it to Tiller, using the Tiller Money Feeds add-on or add-in to get the data in, and then we'll dive into setting up the template and explore some of the features in the Tiller Money Feeds sidebar area, and then I'll start taking your questions. But once again, go ahead and get them into the Q&A at any point. All right, so we scroll on down to the step 2 here, setting up your first spreadsheet. I'm going to start with Google Sheets first. I'm going to try to do simultaneous demos with Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel. I haven't run the Foundations webinar in this way before, so just bear with me as I kind of navigate trying to demo both at the same time. We'll see how it goes. It'll be fun. So click Start with Google Sheets here. And then the great thing about it is that when you get into this template preview, it gives you the steps right here on this Install Help sheet. I already have the Tiller Money Feeds add-on installed with this particular Tiller demo user account, but if you don't have it installed, this is the first time you're just seeing what this page looks like at all, just be sure to go ahead and click on that link where it says click here and install the Tiller Money Feeds add-on. It's just going to open this separate browser tab. It'll have an install button instead of an uninstall button, and just go through those steps of installing the Tiller Money Feeds add-on. I've already done that, so I'm going here to the second step of clicking the Use Template button up here in the top right. And what that's going to do is going to create a copy of the Tiller Foundation template on the Google Drive of this particular user, which happens to be the user that's associated with my Tiller subscription. So a lot of us have multiple Google accounts signed into the same browser. That can cause some snafus, but just try to pay attention to this being the one that you're using, that you use to subscribe to Tiller. So now I've got that template in my Google Drive. I can go into the extensions menu. I'm just kind of following along here in this Install Help tab. I'm at step 3. The bottom of the extensions menu, I'm going to find the Tiller Money Feeds add-on, and I'm going to choose Launch here to go ahead and open up that sidebar. So I'll wait for that to load over there. Can take a couple seconds. And then I'll go ahead and I'll sign in. And so this is just signing into the add-on with the Tiller account that you use to subscribe to Tiller. They're all kind of different systems, so that sign in step is important. So we'll sign in again here. Once I've signed in, I'm can just close this browser tab, and I'll just go ahead and close that one because I don't need it. So I'll click Get Started here. And then I will link the sheet, and this is making the connection between this particular Google Sheet and the Tiller service. So I'll click Link Sheet and give that a second to do its thing. And then I'll choose which accounts I would like to feed data into the spreadsheet. And so I've got a few different institutions connected here. The main one that I'm concerned about that has the most activity right now is this REI Co-op MasterCard from Capital One. So I'm just going to check the box for that one, and then I'll click Confirm, and then it's going to start filling the data into the spreadsheet. And so while that's happening, I'm going to try to simultaneously demonstrate the same thing for Excel. So now that I've got one spreadsheet linked, I can create up to 5 spreadsheets with Tiller and have 5 linked at the same time. And I can try both Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel. I don't have to switch accounts, start a new trial or anything to be able to try Excel, even though I'm signed up with a Google account, this Gmail account. So I'll choose Start with Microsoft Excel. That's going to download a copy, like a copy onto my computer of the Excel foundation template. I'm going to go ahead and open that up in Microsoft Excel. And then it's very similar. We have an install help sheet here. I need to install the Tiller Money Feeds add-in for Microsoft Excel. The add-ins on a Mac are still on this insert ribbon. One thing we've recently learned is that if you're running on a Windows computer and you have Excel open on your Windows computer, the My Add-ins is now going to appear on the home ribbon over here to the far right. And so we just kind of click into this. I've got this screenshot I just uploaded yesterday, the home ribbon. This is from a Windows computer home ribbon, and then My Add-ins. So just notes on how to find it. And so you will, need to kind of open that add-ins from here, and then you can search from the store. And then I already have it installed, but just to kind of demo how you would find it, you just search for Tiller Money Feeds in the store, and then you can go through the steps of adding it. And then it's always going to show up. It should automatically pop open the sidebar once you've installed it, but it'll always show up on the data ribbon, or if you go on that My Add-ins, you can find it there. So we'll open the sidebar here and kind of go through those same steps for Microsoft Excel. I have to sign in. So it's just signing into the add-in, signing it to Tiller via the add-in. And then this might, okay, good. It didn't ask me for my password because that one's very long and complicated. So go ahead and link workbook, just like in Google Sheets. I'm going to choose the accounts I want to feed in. Once again, I'm just going to feed in that Capital One MasterCard. I'll click confirm, and then I'll click this fill button, and it's going to fill that transaction and balance data into my spreadsheet. So those are the really easy steps of getting the data into the spreadsheet. So for Excel here, you can see I've got a few months of transaction data. I've had that account connected to Tiller for quite some time. If you're brand new to Tiller and you're just connecting your financial institutions, you're probably going to get around 30, maybe 90 days worth of data on that initial import. Some institutions, we can go back even further, but it might not come until a subsequent refresh of the data. So usually about 30 to 90 days worth of historical data, you're going to get into your transaction sheet. And then you're going to get balances as of the day that you connected the financial institution. So if I just connected that Capital One card, I would just have today's balance, and that's it. And then I'd have a historical entry every day after that. Transactions will continue to accumulate from this point forward. So everything after this, the refreshes are happening. I'm going to fill the data in, and it's going to, those, as transactions, as I'm spending money, those transactions are going to come into the transaction sheet. So back over in the Google Sheet here, just going to close out these extra tabs. I can see, 300 plus transactions added, a bunch of balances added, because like I said, I've had that account connected for quite some time. And so same thing, got the transactions here in the transaction sheet. The next step with getting set up with Tiller, once you've got the transaction data in there, is to spend some time thinking about your categories. And the spending trends sheet, that's kind of the default sheet you're going to see in Google Sheets once you've filled the data in. It's going to give you some kind of interesting insights right out of the box, like your net worth based on the accounts that you have linked to this particular sheet. And then it's prompting you like, hey, there's a bunch of transactions that need to be categorized. In this case, there's about 18 for the past 30 days. And so until we start categorizing transactions, thinking about our categories, that's when this sheet comes to life. If you haven't gone through these getting started steps and you jump into the foundation template and you get to this point of getting your data filled in, I highly recommend going through these steps as well. I'm going to off-road a little bit and not go exactly in the order of these steps, but these are a great resource to kind of help you think about like how to get started in this foundation template. And so, as I mentioned, the next step is thinking about your categories. So here on the category sheet, we give you some example categories. These are just examples. You can overwrite these, you can add new ones. So if I want it to be more specific, like cell phone, I can just type over the existing categories. You don't have to use these categories. You can customize this to your heart's desire. There's a category, group, and a type column. These are the three important columns to think about on the category sheet here. Think about the group as the bigger bucket, and then the categories fall into that bucket. So you can see I have a discretionary group, and then I have a few categories that fall into that discretionary group. The types are income, expense, and transfer. Transfers are generally things like credit card payments, and I can speak a little bit more to that in a moment, but just noting that these are the three supported types. Don't try to edit this and add additional types. Those won't work with the other dashboards that are in this template. So income, expense, and transfer. And so the idea is that you can customize this based on your specific financial situation. You're not boxed into our categories. A lot of tools do that. And it's frustrating because they don't let you customize them the way you want. With Tiller, you have ultimate control of that. You can hide categories if there's, like transfers, for example, or they're going to be hidden from these other dashboards by default. But if you have other categories that you want to track, maybe let's say like, investment type transactions or any other type of transaction that you're going to categorize it, but you don't really want to see the data on the spending trends sheet, for example, or the monthly budget sheet, for example, you can mark those as hide from reports here. So that's the next step. Once you've got the data in, think about your category structure, or just use the categories that are here. I mean, they're pretty basic. You could use them. Some of them are going to apply, some of them won't, but you could get by with using these example categories and go ahead and just start categorizing your transactions using these. Just for a quick look at Excel, it's the exact same. So same thing, you can change it to be whatever you want here. You can say cell phone, just overwrite those existing categories. No need to use these. Same structure, group, type, category. So back in our Google Sheet here, once you've decided on your categories, the next step is to spend some time categorizing transactions. And that's really easy. In the category column on the transaction sheet, you can just use the drop-down menu here. And so in this case, let's say this was some type of household. Do I have a household category here? Home improvements, Home Depot. So I can use the drop-down menu. I can also just start typing the first few letters of the category. It's going to narrow the list, and then I can press enter and it's going to move me to the next row. So I spent a lot of money at Home Depot. Mostly this was for gardening. Just in this example, I'm not customizing the category. So those are the basics of categorizing transactions. Excel, same exact thing. You just use the drop-down menu if you want, or you can, now that I've got that one filled, same kind of thing. I can type the first few letters and it's going to just it's going to narrow the list, and then I can kind of quickly move down to the next piece. And so that's kind of step 2. We've got our categories. We've categorized a few expenses. We can check that one off. The next thing here it's talking about is credit card payments, which is a common question that we get, like, how do you categorize credit card payments? And so that's where that this transfer category, you could just use the default transfer category that's there. You could add like a CC payment category, and then have it's in the transfer types group, and it's a transfer, and that's going to be the one maybe that you use if you have other types of transfers and you want to be really specific. And so categorizing both sides of that transaction as a CC payment for example, is a great way to handle the credit card payments. All the money that's being spent on the credit card, you just categorize it based on the intent of the spending. So maybe this was some miscellaneous item at the Dollar Tree. So that's kind of the basics of the credit card payments. I have some demo sheets that I would like to use to keep going here that are more filled out. So this one is just to kind of keep going into how the template works and how to set it up. I've kind of customized my categories here. You can see I have way more categories in this list, and I have all this data categorized to help us start seeing the insights and then how to move into like the budgeting aspects of it. So once you've got all that data categorized, however much you want to categorize, it doesn't have to be all of the data that we pull in. That can be kind of overwhelming if you've got multiple accounts and 90 days worth of data. Like there's no need to categorize all that data. Just focus on this week and go forward, or this month and go forward. It's really up to you. The more you categorize, the more insights you're going to be able to gain, because you're going to have more data to kind of analyze. So now that I've got this categorized data in here, if we look at the spending trends sheet, this is really handy for just understanding where my money's going and how much I've spent. So you can use the drop down here to change the time frame. And so by default, it's the past 30 days. But let's say I want to look at this year. I can change that, and then I can kind of review like, okay, from all my paychecks, this is how much I've earned. For each of my groups, this is the total for the group. Remember, that's the bigger bucket. And then for each category within that group, I'm also getting the total. And so this should all add up to the 1459. And then we see, yes, down here, the sum, it adds up to that 1459, because that's the total spending for the discretionary group. So this is a really, really useful way to understand, where is my money going? If you just want to see where it's going, you're just interested in tracking, you're not interested in budgeting, use the spending trends sheet. It's super helpful. If you've been with Tiller for a while and you don't have the spending trends sheet installed into your foundation template yet, you can get it using the Tiller Money Feeds add-on. There's a templates section, and you can go ahead and add the spending trends sheet into your Google Sheets template. If you're in Microsoft Excel, and I also have a demo sheet that's already got the data categorized just for easier demonstration here. Pull it over from this other screen. Same thing. I've got the spending trends sheet here. I'm trying to maximize it. And I can see all of my spending for this year right here in the spending trends sheet. If you've been with Tiller for a while and you don't have the spending trends sheet in Excel, there's some steps that I'll include in the resources that you'll get tomorrow for how to get that in. We don't have that install capability in the Tiller Money Feeds add-in for Excel just yet, but it is coming. I just saw a demo today that one of our engineers gave me of the install capability coming. So it's coming. I don't have the specific timeline for that yet, but it's super exciting because we've got lots of templates being built for Excel, and we're really excited to finally offer that same capability that we have for Google Sheets. So let's say you do want to use this template for budgeting. Back here in the Google Sheet, if you're interested in using this for budgeting, so setting a maximum for a particular category and trying to stay under that max that you want to spend for that category, the place you would want to set your budget targets is on the category sheet. And so you can set those in column E. Some of you may have a version of the foundation template where these columns were grouped. And if I can just, okay, zoom controls in the way. And you may not see those month categories out to the right. And so if that's the case, you just click this little plus here above column D, and it's gonna expand those month columns where you can set the budget. So let's say that my cell phone bill was $75. I can just type in $75 here into column E and press enter, and it's going to cascade out to the right automatically for me. And this is just a really simple formula. It's just using the value from the previous cell. So that's how you set your budget targets. And I'm just going to quickly make this up. This was part of the demo that I didn't have ready. So I'm just kind of making up some stuff here. Maybe this is 50, travel is 100. These actually don't have to worry about. $100 on gas. So this might be like 500. And this is maybe like 1,000. I don't need anything for that necessarily. No freelance. Let's say this is like 8,000 transfers. We don't need to budget for those. Some of these I don't have. So if you leave them in there, you don't have to set a budget for them. So just keep going here and setting these budgets. Let's see, that's 100. Gardens, that's one of my biggest hobbies. I love gardening. And then, okay, so we got some example budgets in there. So you can see they all just populated out across to the right. Excel version, same thing. You just input the budget amount in column E and it's going to move out to the right automatically for you. Now, if you need a specific amount for a specific month, let's say like, you know, auto and gas, when my car insurance premium is due in June, I don't want a separate car insurance category. I'm just lumping it all with auto and gas. So maybe that, you know, that 6-month premium is going to add about $500 to my monthly budget for auto and gas. So I can just simply overwrite that formula in the cell for June for auto and gas, press enter, and then we see that it cascades out to the right, but we don't need it to be that high in July. So we just set it back to 100 for July. And then that kind of corrects all those future months. So that's how you can set a specific category to have a certain amount for a specific month if, you know, if it needs to change that particular month. So now that we've done that, you know, we can take a look at the monthly budget. It's going to default to January, but let's see, we're in November. So now I can review my budget versus my actuals, and I can see how much money is left. And so I can see, for example, in the fun and entertainment category, I only budgeted $50 and I've already spent $54. So I'm a little bit over budget. How did I come up with those numbers? Like you saw me, I just kind of randomly picked some numbers. If you want to get more precise, and this is just me having used Tiller for a long time, like I kind of have an idea of like how much I may spend. Some of them I just kind of made it up. But if you don't have any clue how much you should be spending for your categories, a quick way to get just a basic estimate is to actually use the monthly budget sheet, or you could actually even use the spending trends sheet as well. And just review your actuals. So if you categorize last month up to today, so if you categorize all of your October spending and you went back to the month of October, you could look at the actuals for October as your baseline and decide, like, is that the correct amount or not? Or is that even in the ballpark of like what I'm going to be spending every month for that particular category? So just keeping in mind that sometimes, you know, expenses are higher in one month than other month because of certain special circumstances, like maybe it was someone's birthday and like you had an extra money spent on gifts. Like you may not need that in that month. So just kind of keep those things in mind. But this is a really helpful way to understand what were my actuals for last month to kind of help you set your budget targets. And then just as you're reviewing, go back and you can adjust. And it doesn't matter that it's not January because it's going to cascade out to the right. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't matter that like I'm setting them in January. I'm just doing that because it's a really easy way to get them all populated out to the right. So now we can look and just kind of start looking at our budget and see like where we're over, where we're under. Same thing for gifts. You know, I budgeted $50, but it was someone's birthday that's special to me this month. And so I spent a little bit more. And so I was over budget by $30. So using this available column to help you get a sense for, you know, are you on or off target? And then you can adjust for next month. So I could easily go and say, December for gifts, I know it's probably going to be high because of the holidays, so I can adjust the budget target for December for gifts. The yearly budget is a great way to kind of get the big picture view of your finances across the entire year. And it can also be a way to kind of help you plan out scenarios or just kind of understand like what different situations, how that's going to affect your money. Like if you're expecting an increase or decrease in your income, maybe you're switching jobs or maybe you got laid off, you can kind of help model, you know, what your year is going to look like using the yearly budget sheet. Very similar to the monthly budget sheet and how it's broken out by group, you know, type. So income, expense, and then the group, discretionary, for example, and then the different categories. You get the entire year sort of roll up here in these first 3 columns. So I can see at a glance year to date how things are going, and then I can drill into individual months by scrolling out to the right. And I get that the cash flow data here. So let's talk a little bit more about cash flow. So we've looked at, like the budget actual available. What about all this stuff at the top? So this is where the cash flow tracking actually comes in. There are some cash flow numbers on the spending trends sheet, which I can show off in just a minute. But basically the planned cash flow is how much you're planning to have left over after you, based on your budget plan. So like the difference between what you plan to earn and what you plan to spend, this would be how much is left over. So in this, in this sort of example budget, if everything goes according to plan, if I spend exactly to my budget, then I would have, over $4,000 left over at the end of the month. The cash flow to date is based on your actual. So your actual income so far minus your actual expenses so far. This number is going to be most helpful at the end of the month after the month closes, because it's going to move around a lot during the month as money's flowing in and out. The middle section here is all about your spending. So what you budgeted to spend versus what you've actually spent, and how much of your expense budget is available. So I still have 60% of my budget available, but there's quite a lot of days left in the month. And then over here on the right is the income information, budget versus actual, what I've budgeted versus what I've actually earned so far this month. So those are the basics of the monthly budget, the spending trends. You get a little bit of some of the same information, but you can dial in the time frame a little bit more in detail. You can pick a custom time frame, for example, and then you can see how much your earnings, your expense, and then your cash flow here based on whatever time frame you choose. So this one's really handy for kind of like drilling in a little bit more. All right, so then the last thing here that's just standard in the foundation template is the balances sheet. So this is a really great place to see all the balances for all the accounts that you have linked to this particular sheet. And so if you might notice like ungrouped asset, ungrouped liability. If we go into the accounts sheet, it's intentionally blank because this is a way that you can customize the way things appear on that balances sheet. And so for this example, I can choose this MasterCard here, and I want it to be in a credit cards group. And then I have this aspiration account, which if you've been watching, you've noticed that wasn't an account on my console. This is an account I added manually to the sheet, and I can demo how to do that in just a minute. But this would be like a checking account. Unfortunately, that institution doesn't work with Tiller right now, so I have to manually track that data. And that's one of my personal accounts. Great institution, just doesn't work with Tiller, unfortunately. But there are ways to manually track, which is one of the questions I get most often. So I'll share a little bit more about that. But now when we look at the balances sheet, we can see that those are now, organized into our groups. So this is a great way to organize your accounts. Like if you have investments, college savings, assets, you can add the value of your home. So adding like your real estate assets here to help you get a better calculation for your net worth right here in the foundation template. All right, so I think those are the basics. Let me just go back to my sheet here and see if I missed anything. We categorize some transfers. AutoCat. Yes, we need to talk about AutoCat. So AutoCat is one of those power tools. And if you're not using it yet and you've already gotten started, like definitely check it out. So it basically allows you to automate your transaction categorization. So here in Google Sheets, you can just click on the AutoCat option. And I'll admit this UI is a little bit slow. So if you've experienced that, just click and then just like count to 10. We do intend to upgrade the technology that's behind that to make it speedier. We hear that from you, so we definitely will make that investment. I just don't have a timeline for it. So it's installing right now, and it should give me a heads up in a second when it's done. Okay, now, so it's done there. You can see the example category, the example rule that we put in here was like restaurants, and then if the description contains taco, because we thought maybe that was like something common that people would have, and it's kind of fun. And so the idea is that you can build a rule set to have Tiller, AutoCat, categorize your transactions based on your custom rule set. And so the basic idea is that if the transaction description contains the word taco in this example, then categorize it as restaurants. And so let's just run it and see, like, are there any taco transactions in my transaction sheet? It'll tell me when it has categorized. So it looks like I had 8 transactions that got updated because they had the word taco. So now I want to go find those. Yeah, White Duck Taco Shop. So it worked. The theory that people have a transaction that contains the word taco is real. So I can add more, so like that Home Depot one, I can just go and I can say Home Depot, and then I can sit here and just run it every time, and it's going to tell me. The cool thing about AutoCat is that you can use this rule builder in the sidebar in Google Sheets only right now. We don't have this feature in Microsoft Excel yet, but I can be looking at my transaction sheet and I can build rules right from the sidebar. And so like, I can just copy this description, paste it in. I don't want to add that store number because it's too specific. I want to get the more generic part of the description. And then I can go and say groceries, and I can click create and run. And it'll go and create that rule and then run it while I'm still looking and seeing like, okay, what's the next one that I want to add? So it makes it really easy to build the rule set while you're looking at the transactions. You can also try this rules from past 90 days option, and it's going to search for transactions that are recurring in the last 90 days and suggest some rules. And so like this one, for example, that's my chiropractor. And this is the one that I haven't like customize the categories that much, but it's connected to Tiller, whereas the other one's not. So this is like a subscription. And so then I can choose create and run. So it's just suggesting rules based on recurring description. So it's really handy for helping build that rule set. The last thing I want to share here with AutoCat and Google Sheets is that I can turn on this auto run on fill setting so that when I fill the sheet, if I have this toggled on, it will automatically try to run the transactions that it's about to fill into the sheet against my rule set. So they'll come in already categorized for me if I toggle this on. Excel, just really quickly to kind of show the difference there. Let me open the sheet that's linked. So there's a little bit less tooling here for AutoCat and Excel right now. And so you just click this install AutoCat button, and it's going to add the AutoCat sheet. You can see that the example rule is a little bit different. We didn't add the taco rule to Excel, but the same basic thing applies. I can actually change this, and I should get the same results. And then I can run AutoCat here in the sidebar, and it tells me it completed with updates. It's not as smart as the Google Sheets one yet in that it can't tell me how many it categorized, but I can see here it did get that White Duck Taco. And then there's not a rule builder for, like I said, for Excel just yet. We will likely build that. I don't have a timeline for that, but for now you can just build your rules right in the AutoCat rule sheet. And AutoCat's really, really powerful. It can do more than just categorize transactions. I'll include resources in that in the email that you'll get tomorrow, so you can just learn how to power up your AutoCat rules to do more than categorize, to create multi-criteria rules, things like that. There's so much power with AutoCat. It's so cool. All right, so we're all set up, right? Like if we just go through this spending trend sheet, we've got our auto categorization turned on, we've set up our budget, we've looked at our balances. Now, what's next? So the thing with Tiller to keep in mind is that here on the console in this connected account summary, it's giving you some information about the status of your accounts and how recently they have refreshed. And so you can see here, all these are green, meaning they have refreshed in the last 36 hours. So if it gets to be, 36 hours or so, this will turn yellow and it'll let you know, and this refresh button will turn blue. And that's an indication that like, hey, you probably need to do something. Most accounts that can automatically refresh, and that just means like we're going out, we're pulling data from the bank. Most of them that can automatically refresh will do so in about 36 hours. So there's no need for you to go and refresh them. If they're doing it automatically, we actually recommend that you just let them do their thing and automatically refresh on that about 36-hour timeline. Now, if they can't automatically refresh, and that's some institutions, most of the major banks are now using what's called open banking or an OAuth-based connection. And so we don't have that requirement to go and manually refresh, like Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, and the other bigger banks. Like they can just automatically refresh. But some large institutions that are not yet on open banking, and definitely most of the smaller institutions, a lot of those have security requirements that require you to come to the console and refresh those institutions in order for us to be able to pull the data. And that's a good thing because it means that those connections are secure. But it can be a little bit confusing when you're just getting started with Tiller to realize that you may need to come here to the console and just click that refresh button to pull the data in. Once your accounts have successfully refreshed, you can open your Tiller Money Feeds add-on and you can choose this fill sheets option, or you can launch the add-on and you can click the fill button that's at the top of the add-on. Once that has loaded there, so now it's checking for new data. I didn't refresh anything, there's no new data, but you can also click the fill button there. The last thing I'll say about Google Sheets is that in the settings section here, you can actually toggle on an autofill option. We don't have this available for Excel right now. I'm not sure that we would be able to offer that necessarily, just because most people have their Excel workbooks saved locally on their computer, and there's no way for us to access it to fill it with the data. So TBD on the autofill feature for Excel, but for Google Sheets, it's under settings. And if you toggle this on, it will try to fill new data about once a day. It's usually between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Whatever we've been able to pull from your banks automatically, it will fill that into your spreadsheet for Google Sheets. If there's no new data available at the time that it tries to run, then it won't get added during that fill. Let's say the refresh happens at 8 a.m. The pulling of data from the banks happens at 8 a.m. The autofill already ran, so it wouldn't get filled into the sheet automatically until the next autofill. But you can always launch the add-on and click that fill button to get the latest data available in there. And so just keep that in mind. Like, that's sort of should be part of your weekly workflows, at least, is to make sure your accounts are refreshing. You can do that from the Tiller console. You can also do that from the connected accounts section here in the Tiller Money Feeds add-on for Google Sheets, connected accounts. This can let you know if specific institutions haven't recently refreshed, and you can perform that refresh action here from the sidebar in Google Sheets. We don't have that capability in Excel just yet. We're still working on getting things up to parity with Excel. As you may have noticed if you've been using Excel or you've tried Excel, there's less features in Excel right now, but we are working really hard to get those features built out for Excel. Google Sheets, we kind of started there and just went crazy with all the features, and we're just still playing catch up. So check on those account refresh status, and then just be sure to fill your sheet. And then beyond that, check in on your monthly budget, see how you're doing against your budget. That's not the good budget. This is the good budget. Check in on how you're doing, see how you're doing against those targets, check in on your spending trends sheet, review your balances here on the balances sheet. Let me see if there's anything else in Excel that I wanted to share. There's for both of them. Okay, so like in Excel, we do have a couple tools here. Manual accounts. As I mentioned, I have to manually track one of my checking accounts, and so that account is called aspiration spend, for example, and I can just put in like the last four digits of the account number, and I'm just making up stuff here for the most part. And it's an asset versus a liability, and it's a checking account, and I can just say that the balance, let's say, is like $5,000 or something like that, and I click add manual account, and it's going to go ahead and add that to my spreadsheet here. So then I can see it on my balances sheet here in my Excel foundation template, and then it shows up as an option here where I can go and like update the balance as needed. I can also add manual transactions one at a time for a particular account. If it's an account I'm tracking manually, I can have it update the balance history for me when I add the transaction for that particular account. So those are a couple tools in Excel that are also available in Google Sheets. And those are very handy for manually tracking accounts or getting transactions in like ahead of time if they're still pending, for example. If you need to add transactions in bulk, there's a great resource on our Help Center for how to manually add the data. And I can share that in the resources as well. So I think that was everything that I wanted to demo. It looks like there's quite a lot of questions. We have about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to go ahead and dive into the Q&A. If you have questions, go ahead and get those in. I see those folks continuing to raise their hand, and I'm not going to let you turn on your audio or video. So if you have a question, no need to raise your hand. Just get your question over into the Q&A tool. All right, so Susie asks, I can't get any data to populate the income and expense breakdown section of the spending trends tab. So the one thing to think about with that, and I don't know if you're using Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, that can be handy to know, because what might be preventing them from showing up is going to be a little bit different between the two platforms. Some things to check, or just make sure that you have the headers in row 1, those are still intact. Making sure that your data is categorized, because if you don't have your data categorized, it's not going to show the income and expense there. So those are a couple things off the top of my head, but if you haven't already, definitely reach out to our support team. You can always reach us via the messenger tool here on the Tiller console in the lower right, and just send us a message, and then you can kind of choose from a few options here. You will have a chance to interact with an AI-enabled bot, but if the bot doesn't help you, just say, talk to a person, and you'll get to a member of our team, and we're happy to help. All right, so someone asks, I've set up both my daughters as authorized users on one of my credit cards. How do I filter out their transactions so it does not show up in my monthly budget? That's a great question, and likely, unless they have different last 4 digits here in the transaction sheet, then there's not going to be a way to filter those out. A lot of times with authorized users, it's just the same account, and so the last 4 digits are not going to be different. So there's not going to be a way to filter those out, and that's just sort of a limitation with the way that the bank feeds come in, unfortunately. All right, Max asks, what's the best way to handle budgeting for expected expenses that occur once or twice a year, not monthly? So in the foundation template, the best way to do that is really to just kind of that example I showed of the car insurance, where, for the month of, I think it was in this auto and gas category, just moving the Zoom tools. So for June, it was 600 because I needed to budget more in that particular month than every other month. That's one way that you can do it. The foundation template out of the box doesn't have any rollover features. There's not a way to carry over a balance to show that you've saved up the money for a specific category, like your property insurance and property tax, those kinds of things. If that's something that you're looking for, your best bet would be to check out the savings budget. That's a community built and supported community supported template. It's called the savings budget, and it does allow you to kind of accrue balances for categories to indicate that you've saved X amount over time. But if you don't need to see that, you have the money, you don't necessarily need to save up for that budget, then this is a really easy way to do it. Just identify that particular month has a higher budgeted amount than the other months. So hopefully that helps. Leslie asks, is it possible to add Apple Card? We don't have access to the transaction and balance data for Apple Card at this time. We just can't support them. Apple made agreements with certain aggregators, and our data aggregator was not one of them. And so we're unable to pull data feeds for Apple Card at this time. There are some workflows for how to get that data in manually, and I'll try to include that in the resources as well. All right, someone asks, I'd like to track passive income in a spreadsheet. Things like bank savings account interest, dividends, bond interest. Can you show an example of how to set that up? Well, I can't show too much in depth on that. I do want to try to get through a lot of these questions, but the recommendation I would have there is, you can definitely add those financial institutions to Tiller to pull in the transaction data. And then it's really going to be about probably how you set up your category and group structure, so that, as those transactions are coming in, how you categorize them. And then if you don't want them showing up on your budget, you can, track them as transfers, for example. There's some community workflows where maybe you could use the tags report, for example, is a community supported solution that leverages a tags column in the transaction sheet. You can have AutoCat tag those transactions based on the description. So like a description contains, specific keywords around like the investment dividends, and then have it tag a certain way, and then use the tags report to kind of visualize that data. Otherwise, I would definitely recommend like reaching out in the community or searching in the Tiller community to see if other folks have shared their workflows on how they track that stuff. But that's a great question. All right, Keith asks, when will you complete the agreement with Plaid and make additional banks available? That's a great question. So we are evaluating additional aggregators. So right now, our primary aggregator, our only aggregator, is Yodlee. They are the industry leader in bank data aggregation, but they do, banking aggregation is a very hard industry. Like these financial institutions, they all have a unique website. If the website layout changes, that breaks the connection. And so we're evaluating additional aggregators to have backups, because each aggregator may implement the connection differently. And so we haven't decided on Plaid specifically. We're evaluating a variety of aggregators, and we don't have a timeline for the decision or when that would be available, but it is definitely something that we are working towards, offering additional aggregators to just increase the reliability of our data feeds. Great question. Someone asked, could you cover best practices for tracking investment accounts? Right now, I'm calling all those transactions transfer, but there must be a better way. So kind of to that previous question where, you can use a certain category structure, because you can customize the categories based on your specific needs. You can create a structure that works for you. It really depends on like how you want to visualize the data once it's categorized. And I know that there is a ton of content in the Tiller community on how folks think about those different investment related transactions and keeping them out of their budget, because it's not really like budget relevant on a month-to-month basis necessarily. And so I would definitely recommend searching in the Tiller community. I'll try to put something like at least one community topic in the resources that I share tomorrow, just to make sure you kind of have a starting point. That's a great question. All right, let's see here. Keith asks, is there anything in Tiller to help reconcile downloaded transactions to assure they match downloaded balances? So not out of the box. And I keep referring to the community. I probably should just show you guys like where it is. So if you go to community.tillerhq.com, you can find tons of resources here for things that our other users and spreadsheet enthusiasts are doing and sharing, and a lot of these same questions are over there. And a lot of them are like, there's 99 plus questions in the Q&A right now, and like there's no way I'm going to get through all of them in the next 10 minutes. And so I want to share this with you just as a resource to come and like search. This is not the only place to get help. As I mentioned, reach out to our support team, especially for stuff that is part of the core product. So like foundation template, Tiller money feeds, AutoCat, all those things. There's a ton of community solutions that are available for you to add on top of your foundation template. Google Sheets, there's an add-on you can use. I didn't demo that just because I wanted to also try to simultaneously demo some Excel stuff, and just time constraints. If this could be a 2-hour thing, I don't know if y'all would sit through it, but basically there's a lot here. There's a lot of community solutions. There's a separate add-on for Google Sheets that will allow you to easily install a lot of those solutions on top of your foundation template. We don't have that for Excel yet. I don't think we'll create a separate add-in. It'll just be a part of the Tiller Money Feeds add-in for installing not only product templates, but also community supported templates. And so all that to say, there is a resource here in the community for reconciling basically statements. It's called the statements sheet. It's available in that community solutions add-on that if you're using Google Sheets, you can add it on top of your foundation template, and it will help you reconcile against your credit card statements or your bank statements. We don't have that available for Google Sheets or for Microsoft Excel in any form right now. Some of the show and tell solutions for Microsoft Excel, there is parity with what we have available in Google Sheets, but you still have to manually copy it in. And I'll make sure that those steps are included in the resources that I send out tomorrow. So great question there, Keith. All right, let's see. So any insight on eventually supporting Apple Card and Navy Federal Credit Union as well. Navy Federal should be working. If you're having trouble connecting Navy Federal, please reach out to our support team. They're going to be the ones that can help. Any data feed issues, like the community's not going to be able to help. You could ask like, you know, hey, how's it working for you? But our support team will be able to help you get it connected. We may have to reach out to Yodlee to get support from them to get it connected, but Navy Federal is one of those open banking enabled institutions, and so it should be working pretty well. Apple Card, like, I don't know that we will ever be able to support Apple Card. Maybe the second aggregator that we implement eventually will be able to support Apple Card, but for now we don't have access to that. All right, so how do I change a category name and make it update all the transactions at the same time? That's a great question. So there's not a way to just change the category name here and then it automatically updates. So I want to look at the one here. So as we might notice, like if I just change this to phone here on the category sheet, then I'm going to get instances where I get this little red triangle in the upper right, and it's giving me this like invalid error that, you know, must fall within specified range. That's super vague, but basically it just means that like it's not in the categories list anymore because we changed it. And so there's not a way to just like in one fell swoop go and do that. The best thing I can suggest is just using the built-in find and replace features. So if I go to view, maybe it's edit, yeah, find and replace, then I can find, you know, it was just phone. No, it was cell phone, and I want to change it to phone. And I just want it in this specific range, which is the category column in the sheet, and I can say replace all. I'm going to get this warning, and you might get this warning if you try to make other edits to the transaction sheet, like sorting or, you know, turning on the filter, things like that. And as long as you know what you're doing, just click OK, click don't show this, and then click OK. And it won't bug you for 5 minutes. And so then it went ahead and, you know, made my change. Now it's instead of cell phone, it's phone. So that was a good question. Let's see here. In the future, if I want to change my sign-in account to a different Gmail, will it be possible? So we don't have, eventually maybe. It's not on our short-term roadmap to allow you to change your email address. And so right now, if you want to use a different email address or different sign-in email, you kind of just have to start over, unfortunately. But eventually, I think that is something that we will build in. I just don't have the timeline on that. Great question. So let's keep going down here. I'm just kind of skipping around because I want to just see what else in the Q&A because we don't have that much time left. Someone asks, or Laura asks, what's the purpose of having multiple sheets beyond the initial foundation template? That's a great question. So you may want to link an additional spreadsheet, you know, if you have a business. So you could have like just your business specific accounts linked to that spreadsheet, or maybe you're, you know, taking over your elderly parents' finances and you want to link their financial institutions to Tiller and then link just those accounts to a separate spreadsheet for helping, you know, kind of keep an eye on their money, or maybe like a kid's account or, you know, a sibling's account if they're unable to manage their finances well. There's a lot of different reasons that you may want to create multiple sheets. Maybe you just want to create a sheet and like play around with different templates and a different category schema, like lots of different reasons you might want to have additional sheets beyond just the one foundation template. Great question. Janet asks, do Google and Excel work equally well, or is one better than the other? And that's a great question. And as you might have noticed, there's not as many features in the Google Sheets, or sorry, in the Excel add-in as there are in the Google Sheets add-on, the sidebar basically for either of them. Like I said, we started with Google Sheets first and built out a lot of capability in Google Sheets, and then we're just kind of playing catch up with Excel. So Google Sheets has the templates feature. There's a split tool in Google Sheets that's not yet available in Excel, but it is coming. So is one better than the other? You know, it just depends on which of those features are most important to you. And so I would kind of frame it from that perspective versus like, is one or the other better? It's just which features are important. But like I said, we are working to build out parity with Excel. And so those are coming. It's just a little bit of a slow process. And we have a great help article on just kind of going in more depth on the differences and like which one should you pick. That's a great question. So someone asked, just to confirm, I can connect multiple separate Google Sheet documents. I could have one that only I can see and a separate document that I could share with someone else with different tabs data. Yes, that is correct. So that's another great reason for creating multiple sheets. You know, if you need to share some data with a person, you can just share that Google Sheet with them using the built-in collaboration features in Google Sheets. And it can be distinct, you know, have its own distinct accounts and tabs and all that. So yeah, definitely. That's a great question. All right, let's see, just kind of looking through these. Someone asked, will we eventually see more than 90 days of history, or is 90 days the max it will go backwards? It depends on the institution. Like I think some of the open banking institutions, for example, like Chase, Bank of America, like the initial pull is probably only going to be 30 to 90 days. I think it's usually about 60 days. There's a chance, depending on the institution, that is the next refresh that happens. Remember, going out and grabbing data will actually be able to grab more historical data and pull that into the spreadsheet. But that's going to vary by institution, so no guarantees that we'll be able to get more than 90 days of history. All right, so Bruce asks, how can I get data updates for up to a year so I can start over now for 2023? So to get that additional data, you would need to manually add the historical data beyond what Tiller was able to pull in. And that'll be included in the resources for sure. Keith asks, is there a way to create a button or app script in Google Sheets to run the fill function? I don't think there is. I've gotten this question before, and maybe there's some chatter about it in the community, but basically, you know, your best bet is either to turn on the settings for the autofill or to use the extension Tiller Money Feeds Fill Sheets for that one, Keith. All right, let's see here. Corey asks, are there any customization options for the trends sheet? Well, I would like to know more specifically what you mean by customization options. I mean, the ones that are built in are just like the date ranges that you can pull. You can choose a custom date range. There is one kind of neat, if we go look at this one, because it has more categorized data, there's one sort of hidden thing. Like if you go here, there's like, if you see this little sort of rectangle with the left facing arrow, if you click that, it kind of makes the formatting weird for a second, but there's this cool like more space checkbox that if I then go and like hide all these columns again, it kind of expands the amount of available space, like adds the spacer between the groups. Because if you may have noticed previously, they were all kind of crunched together, which I find it to be a little hard to read. And so this kind of gives it more space. I think we did it that way just so it wouldn't, you know, wouldn't run down the page so long. But anyway, that's one thing. I don't know if there's other things specifically that you mean, but you're also welcome to, you know, this hidden area that I expanded here. This is kind of like how everything is working. So I don't totally understand it because I don't build all these, but it's basically like it's the brain behind what you see on the left side. And so you're welcome to go in there and kind of tinker with things and see if you can figure out how it's working and add customizations that way. You can always restore it if you break it using the Tiller Money Feeds add-on here in the templates area. This area, which we don't have for Excel yet, but you can go through here and restore or update templates. So like if a template, we find a bug and we publish a fix for it and there's a newer version available, this template section will say update instead of restore. But if you were to break it, you can go in and restore it to get it back to its working version. So hopefully that helps. All right, got a couple more minutes here. Laura asks, if I want to add detail to the description, such as what the Amazon purchase was, is it better to change the description or full description cell? I want to still be able to have standard reports pull all Amazon charges together. I would definitely update the the description here, just because it's going to be like, well, I guess, yeah, I don't know totally what you mean by have standard reports pull all Amazon charges together. It depends on how you're categorizing them. Like if you change the description to be specifically what the purchase was, then at that point, there wouldn't necessarily be an easy way to aggregate that it was like an Amazon purchase unless you're also categorizing it as Amazon. But my guess is that if you're changing the description to the purchase, then you're going to want to categorize it appropriately based on what that actual spending was. And so maybe changing the full description, maybe adding a note. You can totally add a notes column. So you could just say insert one left. And then once again, like I know what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to say, okay. And then I can have note. And then I can just, basically just add notes about like what it was. And so it still would say Amazon, but you could have a note. So that's probably what I would suggest for that one. All right, well, I know there are a lot more questions in here, but we are at the top of the hour, so I want to respect everyone's time. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out, but I really appreciate you all joining me for this webinar. Like I said, you'll get an email tomorrow with a link to some resources. I'll try to go through the questions and provide some answers to those in the resources. I don't think I'll be able to get to all the questions because there were so many, but definitely reach out and support if you still have questions or if you need to troubleshoot something. Our support team is great about helping you get things fixed. And the resources will also include a link to the recording of the session so you can rewatch it later. I know I probably went through the demo really fast, and I often get feedback that I talk really fast, so I apologize if it went too fast for you, but feel free to check out the recording and pause as I do things and kind of do them simultaneously in your own sheet. Once again, I really appreciate you all joining me today. Thanks so much, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.